and welcome to Amigos IAS. I am Adnan. In today's segment, we'll be discussing some of the outcomes of the recently concluded 13th Ministerial Conference of the WTO in Abu Dhabi. In this, of course, we are expecting some issues to be resolved, but unfortunately, there was no consensus among the members. So let's try to understand a few of those issues and let's see what is India's stance on them. So starting with this, the headlines were mostly regarding India has prevented any kind of attempts by the developed countries to agree on the removal of these subsidies for the agriculture sector in India. And also, there was also some debate going on regarding the subsidies on fisheries removal. That aspect I will be covering very soon. And also, there was questions regarding the e-commerce, digital industrialization, and also there was a discussion on the dispute settlement mechanism of WTO. So all these four issues we are going to discuss in this particular session. So starting with this, what happened in this particular conference? The expectations were high, but unfortunately there was no consensus. So here you can see fisheries or agriculture. There was no agreement signed here, and India decided to defend its farmer-friendly policies. What are those? I'll just come back to that. And this statement said by the Union Commerce Minister, what he's saying is that we do not want to concede any ground when it comes to the interests of the Indian farmers, guys, and our fishermen also. And before I explain what are those issues, let us first have a brief understanding about what is this World Trade Organization about. This WTO is nothing but an extension of the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. This was replaced by WTO in the year 1995 by Marrakesh Agreement. Marrakesh is a place in Morocco. So on 1st Jan 1995, WTO has been established and its headquarters are in Geneva in Switzerland, and there are 164 member countries are there in WTO. Decisions, unlike World Bank or IMF where quotas are given to the countries, in WTO decisions are taken by consensus, and many agreements come into force if 2/3 members will ratify them. So these are the basic rules of WTO. It is a forum which is established for what purpose? It's a global system of trade rules for facilitation of trade, for removal of any kind of tariff or non-tariff barriers. This international organization was formed. It's a forum for negotiating trade agreements between the countries, and it is also settling what? Trade disputes between the members and supports the needs of developing countries. That means developing countries are not standing on the same footing as developed countries. WTO allows all the countries to be on same forum, negotiate any kind of agreements by consensus, and also it gives a mechanism to solve disputes as well. That means if any country is trying to go for protectionism, unilateralism, WTO's dispute settlement mechanism helps the countries to solve the disputes. But there are some problems with that which I will be discussing just in a few minutes. Now coming to the next point here, why India did not concede any space in agriculture and fisheries. This topic of WTO is quite big in nature, so I will be discussing only a few segments in this particular class. So in this WTO agreement on agriculture, what was being proposed here? In 1986-88, agreement on agriculture was signed in the WTO, and in this agreement on agriculture, the question was regarding the subsidies being given to the farmers. That means WTO promotes free trade, as we all know, or we can say no barriers for the trade, but if developing countries provide subsidies for their farmers, then the markets will be distorted. This is the argument made by the Western world, especially the USA. Now, India says that it has to give subsidies for its farmers, and like MSP what we give, okay, and fertilizer subsidies what we give, or direct income support also. These subsidies India says we are giving for our farmers because they are doing it for sustenance basis. That means unlike the USA where corporate farming is done, where farming is not for sustenance basis, in India we have to save our poor farmers. Already, as we know, we are protesting for the legalization of MSP in Punjab and Delhi border, as we are seeing that protests are going on for a long time. So India cannot make any effort to stop those subsidies. What this particular agreement on agriculture says, there is something called as de minimis rule. De minimis rule means your total production of grains is, imagine, some $1 billion. On that, developing countries can provide subsidies to how much extent? 10% extent. And developed countries can provide 5% subsidies. Developing countries shall provide 10% subsidies only, not more than that. So I'll get back to this point here. Okay, the value of India's rice production was $46 billion as per a calculation, while subsidies are $6.31 billion. That means total production value of rice of India is $46 billion. On that, we are giving subsidy of $6.31 billion. That means how much percentage of subsidies are there for the overall value of production of rice? It is 13.7%, higher than this 10% ceiling. So the developed countries are saying that India is providing more subsidy for its farmers, bypassing this 10% cap. That is the argument made by the developed countries. But India is saying that no, we have to give it because we have to support our programs. India has a food security program also. In 2013, National Food Security Act was passed, and the government of India currently also is implementing a scheme. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana also is there, where almost 80 crore population of Indians are getting the subsidized food grains, guys. Okay, free ration is going to, and now government has made it completely free, of course. So free ration they are going to get. So India has this program already. So India is saying that we need a permanent solution for the stock holding of the food grains. Okay, so here we can say public stock holding program, because in 2013 India managed to get a peace clause at Bali conference. Because developed countries were insisting that we have to reduce subsidies, we managed to get a concession in 2013 in the Bali conference that India can, for a few years, okay, can provide subsidies more than 10% also. But this peace clause is temporary in nature. India wants a permanent solution for the public stock holding of the food grains. That is the unresolved issue as of now. In the current ministerial conference also, there was no consensus on this particular argument, guys. Fine. And what about subsidies of fisheries here? Now this is a big topic basically. So I will briefly explain you what is the meaning of this particular subsidies on fisheries. So last 2 years ago, when the negotiations were going on, an agreement was signed on fisheries subsidies also. Many countries provide subsidies for the fisheries. India also provides subsidies, let's say for fishing vessels. For our traditional fishermen who will go out for fishing, India provides subsidies for the traditional fishing vessels also. And now the agreement says that on the unregulated, okay, and illegal, unregulated, unreported fisheries, in those areas, no subsidies have to be given. And in those areas where overfishing has been done, government should not provide subsidies. This is the essence of the agreement on fisheries subsidies. India, of course, welcomed the proposal, but the point is we have not ratified this. Why? Already in India, most of the fishermen who are going for the fishing are poor, and they will do it for their, again, sustenance basis. So now if we try to remove the subsidies for those poor fishermen, they are going to face the problem, because now the cost of doing this fishing will increase. And this agreement also prohibits any kind of subsidies for the people, fishermen for the high seas. That means beyond the national jurisdiction, if you go for fishing, then subsidies should not be provided. Now these arguments, of course, on paper they sound good, but India has not ratified this agreement on fisheries subsidies, South Africa also, because this is completely imbalanced here. Other countries already heavily subsidize their fisheries sector, and they are quite advanced in nature, and they already have done a lot of overfishing, unlike in India. So India is saying that our traditional fishermen are going to face the problems if this particular fisheries subsidies are removed. That is why India has not ratified the fisheries subsidies agreement also. Hope you understood these two important arguments on the agriculture as well as fisheries. If you have any questions, please post in the comments, guys. Fine. And next one here, what is this other issues? IFDA. China is pushing this. It's an investment facilitation program, guys. India, South Africa have objected to this adoption of, see here, unmandated, China-led, plurilateral between a few countries. What is the agreement here, guys? IFDA means what? Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement. What does this mean? It means countries will now have to reduce the tariffs what they pose. That means they will have to ease the facilitation mechanism for investment to come. China is leading this, guys. At least 120 countries accepted this, of course. okay, representing 70% of WTO membership. WTO basically is a multilateral trading platform. Now, this is a plurilateral agreement, which means between a few countries, not all WTO countries. WTO rarely, of course, but it still allows countries to go for plurilateral trading arrangements. But India does not like it. India says it is bypassing like WTO's mandate. WTO basically covers all the countries who are the members. But these kind of agreements, that too led by China, give suspicions for us. Why? Because China is known for its debt diplomacy, where China is able to finance infrastructure projects in many countries, but those projects are quite unviable. You cannot repay the loan back to those countries which give loans. For example, China will give a lot of funding for those projects, but those projects are financially not so viable, so nothing much returns come out of it. As a result, we are compelled to give that land away. Like Hambantota port was given by Sri Lanka to China for a 99-year lease because they are not able to pay back the loans what they have taken. That means China will try to invest in other countries providing the loans, but again the countries are not able to pay back those loans, and this is going to create a situation where China will be able to take away those lands for lease and they can hold those lands. So India is quite wary about this Chinese-led proposal of IFDA. Fine. So see here, while all international agreements limit the scope for domestic regulations, of course to some extent, if you sign any international agreement, you have to reduce the tariffs and you have to ease the facilitation mechanism. But here, because in the case of IFDA, what is happening here, it compromises the sovereign rights of member countries. In the name of investment facilitation, you have to relax all the controls and countries like China will come and do investment quite freely. No need to militarily occupy any country, guys. Just directly, economically, you can occupy other countries by mechanisms like this. This is what India is quite worried about. That's why we have not agreed on this IFDA proposal. What about the next one? Custom duties moratorium means a ban on e-commerce. In 1998, this agreement was signed, guys. What does this mean? E-commerce means any kind of electronic transaction of goods, whether it is music, any kind of video games, or any kind of transfer of any kind of books also. Electronic transfer, guys, not physical transfer. Physical transfer means already if some good comes to other country, customs will be taxing them. We are able to put some tariffs on them. But if electronically I download some music, electronically I download a video game, no tariffs on those things. That is what is the agreement, guys, here. In 1998, this was signed. That means no country shall impose any kind of tax on the e-commerce transactions. But countries of developing countries are not happy with this. How long will you extend this? From 1998 till 2024, and now because no agreement was signed, again next 2 years later in Cameroon, there is going to be another ministerial conference, and now we have to wait until those years. We cannot tax those big companies, the big technological companies, big tech, what we call Amazon, Apple, these cannot be taxed for the electronic exchange of these goods. That means e-commerce. I hope you understand this point, guys. Okay. Phase saver was a temporary extension, of course. The right to levy custom duties at the border on transmission of digitized content. It has been in place since 1998. Okay. And now you can see here, countries like USA want a permanent ban on e-commerce custom duties, not temporary like this. That means since 1998, we are extending every 2 years this kind of ban. Ban on what? Ban on imposing taxes. On what? The digital content. Okay. Now countries like India, developing countries, want to improve their own digital public infrastructure. We want to go for digital industrialization. If I don't put tax on the e-commerce of these big countries, how will I get the money here? So I am losing money every year because I am not able to put tax on the e-commerce. Hopefully you understand this point, guys. Okay. So developing countries oppose the renewal so that they can put some kind of tax or tariff on both for revenue and to support their own digital industrialization. That means if I put tariff on the US e-commerce, I will get some money. I will use that money for my own industrialization, digital industrialization. That is the twin goals here, guys. Moratorium expires now in March 2026 because now next time in Cameroon, we are going to have next Ministerial Conference. And what about the last one here? Okay, before that, as you can see from this graphic, revenue losses for developing countries are $10 billion per year because we are not able to tax the e-commerce. Electronic music, electronic video games, electronic books are not taxable, guys. We are losing revenue out of that. If any good come physically, we will tax, but electronically, no tax. Because of that, we are losing the money. For India, almost $500 million per year we are going to lose because we are not able to put tariffs on those e-commerce transactions, guys. And few big firms like Apple or Amazon, they will dominate the global e-commerce landscape. Okay, and huge digital divide exists between the developed and developing countries. As we know, technology is not same in both the countries. WTO, last segment before we end the session. WTO dispute settlement body. There are generally two-tier mechanism in WTO to solve the dispute, because see guys, if there is no dispute mechanism, any country can do anything in WTO and get away with it so easily, and nobody is there to question them. But WTO dispute mechanism is there to allow the countries to solve the disputes on a mutually agreed solution in first case, or adjudication by the WTO's dispute settlement mechanism. Appellate body is there. That means you can appeal any decision of WTO in the WTO's appellate body. But there the judges will be there, right? So out of 7 judges, now it is only 4. USA has been blocking the appointment of judges or members to the WTO's dispute settlements appellate body, guys, here. And membership has now come down from 7 to 4. So WTO's dispute mechanism is not working here, guys, for the last 4 years, or I can say more than 4 years it is. 2019, from that time onwards till now, there has been no addition of judges, or I can say members, to the WTO's appellate body, guys. That means, what is the outcome of this, guys? The problem is that without having any dispute settlement mechanism, any country can break the trade rules and go for protectionism, go for unilateralism, and escape without any kind of action against itself. Because WTO can take action against those countries, but if you don't put the dispute mechanism properly, if there are no members there, who will adjudicate? That means now it is defunct for the past 4 or more years, guys. So these are the outstanding issues which have been unresolved in the current Ministerial Conference, which has put question on the relevance of WTO. Should it make place for other trade agreements, let's say like RCEP? WTO's term has come to end. These kind of calls we are seeing a lot these days, because if a big forum like WTO is not able to bring consensus on key issues, then what is the use of having this WTO? That are the questions which are being asked these days, guys. So I hope you understood these issues. If you have any questions, please post in the comment section. I'll be happy to clarify your questions, guys. So keep watching Amigos IAS. I'll come back with some other video next day. Thank you.